When you start moving, when you start taking action, even if it's like a tiny action, that will send signals to your brain that you're no longer a victim and you can figure things
You are
out.
listening to the Decluttering Club podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Mueller, and it's my mission to equip women to declutter their homes, their time, and their lives so that they can cherish what truly matters.
You are listening to the Decluttering Club podcast, episode number 46 10 ways to know if you're stuck in a victim mindset and how to turn it around. Now, one of my business core values is tough love. Okay, tough love. You may know that if you've been around here for a while. And today's episode is going to be an example of that. So before we get into this, I just want to remind you this is not judgment. This is not condemnation. This is not, I don't want anyone to hear this and think, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I feel even worse. Okay, that is not the point here. The point of these podcasts is for me to serve you. So make sure that you are listening to this through that lens. Okay. And if you're like in a particularly vulnerable time or you're really struggling, then this may or may not be the right episode for you to listen to today. Okay. So really like take this to heart before you dive in because some of this is going to be challenging, right? This was challenging for me to write, and it may be challenging for you to hear, but I think it's important because I see a lot of this showing up, and I see it not only in our community. I mean, and we're human beings, okay? Human beings can fall into this kind of a space, right? So I see it in our community, but I see it in the bigger world, and I see a lot of suffering because people don't realize that this is going on. And I want to help, right? I want to show you another way to think about things. I want to show you a way out, and this is the way out. Are you ready? Okay, cool. One of my favorite authors is called David Hawkins, and he has a book called Letting Go. It's an appropriate name, isn't it? It's all about letting go. And in this book, he has this quote that just like hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm going to read it to you. Okay. The quote is, "Blame is the world's greatest excuse. It enables us to remain limited and small without feeling guilty." Ooh, ouch, right? When we're blaming other people, we can remain limited and small without feeling guilty because it's not our fault, right? Okay, he goes on to say, "But there is a cost, the loss of our freedom. Also, the role of victim brings with it a self perception of weakness, vulnerability, and helplessness, which are the major components of apathy and depression." Okay, let's sit with that for a moment, right? Blame is the world's greatest excuse. It allows us to remain limited and small without feeling guilty. Oh my gosh, that just I don't want to remain limited and small, right? Like, I don't want that for myself, and I sure don't want it for you. And I don't want any of you to feel weak. I don't want you to feel helpless. I don't want you to feel vulnerable. And what David Hawkins is telling us is that if we don't want those things, then we cannot allow blame to be the name of the game. Okay? Are you with me? Okay, good. All right. Now, moving on. So much of what turns us into victims is people thinking, well, it's just not fair, or the world is against me, or, if only things would have happened differently. Does that sound familiar to you? I hear this so often, oh my gosh, we just can't catch a break. Thing after thing after thing happened, and this person did this, and this person did this, and this happened, right? And so we feel like the world is against us. Here's the thing. The world is not a fair place. The world never promised that it was going to be fair. Bad things are going to happen to good people. This is kind of the way the world works. And I was reading another book this morning. It was reminding me that, without the contrast, right? Without the sadness, there's no happy. How would you know if you're happy if you never experienced being sad? You wouldn't. You would have no idea. Okay. And so we don't want to wish away like the bad stuff in the world. Now, does it mean that we like it? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that we don't wish that the world were different? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that when bad things happen, things that we do not like, when they happen, we have a choice. Okay? And that is where all of your power lies. Okay? All right. Let's move on here. Staying stuck in victim mode, it's not serving anyone. It's not serving you. It's not serving the people around you, right? And it feels terrible. It feels terrible to think that you're a victim, doesn't it? And whether or not it's true is not the point. I never want you to feel, again, like you're at the mercy of the world or at other people. Sometimes you may not even realize that you're stuck in victim mode. You might be like, this is just the truth. This is like the weather. I can't change it. It's just the way things are. But we can always change the way we're thinking about things. So, this podcast is going to help you take a thoughtful look. Remember, we're not judging ourselves, we're just being thoughtful here. And you can make changes if you see something in yourself that you don't like. Okay, we're going to talk about ways to recognize victim mode, and then we're going to talk about how to turn it around. Okay, number one. Here's the number one way to know if you are stuck in victim mode. And I can talk about these things because I have experienced all of them. And all of us have, right? Because we're human beings. Okay. Here's the number one way. You spend a lot of time mad at other people. A lot of time mad. This might look like being mad at your kids when they don't do the things that you've asked them to do. They're not putting their stuff away, right? You're all mad at them, like maybe irrationally mad, right? You're mad at other people for things that they have done, but you're not taking the time, let's say, again, going back to the kids, you're not taking the time to teach the kids how to do the thing you want them to do in an age appropriate way. And then you're also not holding them accountable. Okay? Kids are not automatically going to grow up knowing how to, put their shoes away or put their backpacks away or clear the table. They don't learn that automatically, and it takes a heck of a lot of repetition for them to know. And if you're not holding them accountable, then they're probably not going to do it unless there's some magical unicorn child who is neat and tidy and just adores doing those kinds of things. We have to hold them accountable. And when we don't, and then instead we just say, oh my gosh, my kids won't listen to anything I want them to do, that is being stuck in victim mode. My dear friend Bijal Patel, she says, love is accountability. And that's one of their family mottos. And I love this so much. If we love other people, if we love our kids, if we love our partners, we're going to hold them accountable. And they may or may not like that. That may not be great news, but we're going to hold them accountable because love is accountability. Okay, next way to know if you're stuck in victim mode. You're holding other people to a different standard than you hold yourself. Oh, this one hurts so much, doesn't it? This goes along with, let's say, clutter blindness, right? Have you ever felt like this before? You have a pile of things. Maybe it's papers, right? Or maybe it's clothes. And you look at the pile and you're like, I know what's in that pile. That's not junk. I just haven't gotten to it yet, right? I know exactly what it's there. It's not clutter. I will get to it. All right. That's your standard for yourself. Now, on the other hand, you see a similar pile and maybe it belongs to your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife. And you look at that pile and you're like, why do they have all that crap? Like, what is going on? That has been there for way too long, right? And you have a different standard for that person than you do for yourself, right? This is being stuck in victim mode, right? Because it's so easy to notice all the things that other people are doing wrong. And it's so easy for us to give ourselves a pass, right? So again, just notice and see if that might be true. I know it was for me a lot of the time. All right, number 3, you keep coming up with excuses about why you didn't do things or why you can't do things. This is a classic victim strategy, right? I once had someone email in and I read her email and she started off by telling me how she was on a fixed income, right? And I thought, okay, she's going to tell me that this is why she can't join my program. People don't have to apologize or tell me why they don't join, but frequently they do. So I figured that's what was going to go on. Like that's why she had emailed in. But it turned out that she was actually emailing in to tell me, hey, I'm on a fixed income. but I found your program, your material so valuable that I figured out a way to budget this into into my monthly spend. And so she was just calling or emailing to tell me that that's what had happened. I'm telling you, I was blown away because 9 times out of the 10, people are emailing me to tell me they can't afford, if they're on a fixed income. And again, no judgment here. Everyone needs to decide what is valuable for them or not. But this woman just took that extra step and she made some sacrifices to join our membership because she felt that it was going to serve her in the long run. Now, that is what I call like taking control of your life, taking back your power and not letting your circumstances define you in a huge way. Number 4, you are resentful, remember, mad. You're resentful or mad of how other people are acting, but here's the kicker. You're not willing to have the hard conversations or make the hard decisions that would address the issues. Okay, so what this looks like is, I'm so mad that I don't know that I can never get anything done. I'm so mad that I keep like you know, missing paying bills on time, or I keep missing taking out the trash, or I keep missing whatever, right? But you're not willing to say, okay, how can I fix this? How can I make sure that that bill gets paid on time? Maybe it's going to require me to be a little bit more disciplined. Maybe it's going to require me to have someone else hold me accountable or set up auto pay or something like that, right? Or maybe I need to tell someone, hey, I don't want to do that thing, right? That you want me to do, right? Maybe you've committed to something and now you're feeling like a victim because you can't get out of it, out of that commitment. That is not true. That is a lie that your brain is telling you because we want people to like us. We want to feel safe, and having a hard conversation feels very threatening. So instead, we don't have the conversation and we stay stuck in victim mode, and then we're resentful and bitter and mad. That is not a fun place to be. Right, number 5, you feel negative a good portion of the time. And whether that's 50% or whatever, it doesn't really matter what the number is. But if you spend a lot of your day feeling very negative, feeling like the world isn't fair or everybody's against you, you're probably stuck in victim mode. And again, we don't want you to stay there. We want to show you that there's an alternative available to you. Number 6, you don't look for your own responsibility in a situation, right? And again, so maybe this goes back to the story about the kids. Those kids don't clean up their room, or they don't, they won't pick up, or they won't listen to me. Okay, that's what the kids are doing. But what are you doing? What have you done to influence this situation? Did you hold them accountable? Did you say yes to them bringing more things in the door, right? And not teaching them how to let things go. And that may be really, really hard to have. And again, it's so much easier to just blame them, blame the world. It's not fair. They won't listen to me. But then you're missing out on what is your responsibility and where did you contribute? Number 7, you don't bother to try doing things that might help because you think nothing's going to help. Why should I bother? It's not going to help. After all, right? Feels good to feel sorry for yourself, and you're a victim. It's not your fault that things are the way they are, right? Now, this can get into apathy and hopelessness and despair and things like that. And I'm telling you, the antidote to despair is action. Action, and that could just look like getting up off the couch and going and washing the dishes, right? Once you are in motion, then you will feel more in control, right? Because victims can't move, victims are stuck. So when you start moving, when you start taking action, even if it's like a tiny action, that will send signals to your brain that you're no longer a victim and you can figure things out. Number 9, you obsess about how you have been wronged. This one was very relevant to me. A few years back, I had hired someone, and to be honest, I wasn't paying attention to what that person was doing. I wasn't holding them accountable. I kind of just let them do what they thought was best, but all the while, I was getting madder and madder and madder, and I didn't have the hard conversation. And I eventually did let that person go. But even after I let them go, I was so mad and I was just obsessing over like, how could I have let this happen? How could I have done this? Right? all of that was just completely worthless. It was pointless to be asking those questions because I wasn't asking them, like looking for ways that I could have improved. I just kept like cycling and spinning in that place. How could I have let this happen? That's victim mode. And a friend of mine said to me, you know what? Like, that's the best thing that ever happened to your business. And I was like, excuse me? Really? And he said, yeah, because now you know what you want. And now you're going to be able to manage the next person so much better. And that's going to be better for you. And it's going to be better for that person because now you have a better chance of success because now you're willing to say what you want, you know what you don't want, and you can move forward. Okay, so don't obsess over how you've been wronged. It doesn't change the situation, it doesn't change the facts, and it really keeps you stuck in victim mode. And number 10, and again, we've kind of already touched on this, but you have a negative view of the world. You think the world is a scary place. You think the world is an evil place. You think that the world is going to hell, all of those things. Like this is very much victim mode, right? And you can find evidence for that. Our brains are going to look for evidence for the things we believe. This is called confirmation bias, right? If you believe that whatever is true, you're going to find examples of that all day long, right? Now, you could also believe that the opposite is true. You could believe that the world is a beautiful place. You could believe that there are people all around you that are just looking for opportunities to help. You could look for evidence of good in the world. And I'm telling you, once you start looking, you're going to find it. So it really just depends on which thing are you looking for, because either way, you are going to find it guaranteed. All right, now we've gotten through the hard stuff, okay? We've gotten through the hard stuff. Victim mode, it feels really terrible, right? It really does. And sooner or later, if you are in that place, you're going to regret the things you did or didn't do because that's where you were. And that is what we want to be aware of because we don't want to live a life of regret. Okay. And we can only change in the now. We can't change yesterday. We also can't change tomorrow. All we can change is what's happening right now. And we can take action now. Sometimes we stay in victim mode because we're trying to do what we call staying in our own lane. Okay, and staying in our own lane means like you take action on the things that are yours, that you have ownership of, whether there's actually things in your house, you can declutter your own stuff, but not your husband's or not your kids or not your wife's, right? That's what we call staying in your own lane. And we do teach the idea of staying in your own lane, but only up to a certain point, okay? Because it can turn into victim mode if you're like, well, I can't do anything about that. Oh, well, that's my kids, that's my parents, that's what other people aren't okay with, right? But the thing is, you do have options, you do have choices, and you may choose not to touch someone else's things, but that is a choice that you want to make intentionally on purpose and not something that you're like, well, I just can't, because that is not true, right? You absolutely can deal with things that do not belong to you. That is an option that you have, or you can have a hard conversation, or you can set some boundaries, right? And again, now once you're setting boundaries or you're having that conversation, now you're no longer in victim mode. That doesn't mean that we're going to control the other people. It doesn't mean that we can make other people do things that we want them to do, because we can't, right? But we can control how we think about the situation, and we can also control how we respond to the situation. And this can go to the extreme case. Let's say you live with someone who is a diagnosed hoarder, right? Or they identify as a hoarder and they just keep bringing stuff in the door, right? And you're like, I don't like this, but I can't do anything about it because so and so is a hoarder. Now, I don't use that word very often, right? You may know, but being a hoarder is a diagnosed condition, and there are people also who identify as hoarders, right? So if this is the case, now for you to say, well, there's nothing I can do here, now you're stuck in victim mode and you feel helpless and powerless. Whereas the truth is, there are things that you can do about the situation, right? You could call in help. You could insist, hey, this isn't safe anymore. We're going to have to deal with this. You may say, I can't be here if this is the way the house is going to be, right? And sometimes that is the best answer for you, right? And again, when we are not in victim mode, when we are choosing our power and owning our power, now we will see that some of these things are available to us. Now, it doesn't make them easy, it doesn't make them pretty, but it may be the thing that you need to do to preserve your own sanity. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Well, the more positive stuff. I want to talk about how to get out of victim mode. Right now, you know how to identify it. Now you know what it looks like it. And you probably see it in yourself. I know I do, right? Because we're human beings and this is what human beings do. Okay. But how do we turn it around? How do we get out of victim mode? Number one, and this is maybe the most important tool that you have. I want you to cultivate and develop a growth mindset. Okay, a growth mindset, right? There's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, fabulous book. And she talks about there's really like two schools of thought. And one of them is fixed mindset. She calls it fixed mindset. And that's like things are the way they are. We can't change them, like just kind of like hang on for the ride. That's a very fixed mindset. And then there's the opposite of that is the growth mindset. And if you are holding a growth mindset for yourself, for your life, you're looking for ways that things can improve. You're looking for the good. You're looking for the opportunity. How is this serving me? What can I do differently? Like you're putting on your brainstorming hat and you're getting creative. You don't see challenges as fatal or final or as evidence that that you have failed. You're just like, okay, this is a puzzle. And now I have to figure out my next steps. So growth mindset is incredibly powerful in getting you out of victim mode. Next, you want to remember that failure or setbacks or challenges or whatever isn't permanent. Okay? It isn't permanent. In fact, you could say that there is no failure, right? There is only success. Like either you get what you want, things go the way you want them to go, or you've learned something, right? We can use all of the experiences in our lives, for our own good. Now, again, it doesn't mean that we like them all. I'm not saying that we love all the terrible things that have happened to us, but how can we use them? How can we make them fuel for the future? My coach says that failure is the tuition for the next stage of your life. Tuition, we paid for that. Let's not waste it. You can waste tuition. You can pay for something and then waste it, right? And that's what happens when you go through something hard and you don't learn anything from it. That's wasting that tuition. We want to use it as fuel, right? Failure only moves us on to becoming stronger or more knowledgeable or more experienced or more compassionate or, being able to handle things in a different way. All right, my next one. This is one that I try to live by always, and it is refuse to talk badly about other people, period. Don't do it. Don't gossip, don't complain, don't get bitter because those are all signs of victim mode, right? And whether or not it's true doesn't matter, right? That is beside the point. When I notice I'm complaining about people or about situations, I'm saying there's nothing I can do here. And I never want to say that to myself. Never. I always want, even if it's something like we had this come up on Facebook the other day where someone had said, do you ever complain about, the cost of something? Do you ever complain about prices? And I said, no, I don't, because I never want to tell myself or my kids or anybody, I never want to say, oh my gosh, that's way too expensive. That's so horrible, right? That's victim mode. What I want to say is that is not in my budget. I am choosing not to buy that. That does not have the value for me to spend that money. Do you see the difference there? Huge difference, world of difference, because in the one, I'm just at the mercy. I can't fix it. Oh well, right? And then I feel helpless. Whereas if I'm in the growth mindset, if I'm realizing, hey, I am choosing not to buy this because it doesn't fit my priorities. Guess what? Now I'm the boss. Now I am in control of this situation. Huge difference. All right, next item on this list. Always look for your own responsibility in a situation. Always. You can't control other people. We can't control the weather. We can't control, accidents. We can't control any of that, right? So let's stop trying to control all of that stuff. But what we can control is how we react, how we think about things, how we respond. And that is where all our power lies. So we want to make sure that we're focused in on those things that we can control. And again, it could be our words, it could be our actions, or it could just be our thoughts. This is a huge tool that most people neglect and they miss out on the power of their own thinking. Take a look and see, how did I contribute to that situation? And maybe you didn't. And so maybe it's just that you're like, okay, now I know, right? Now I know for the future. But a lot of the time we will notice, again, going back to the example of the kids who leave their stuff lying around. How did I contribute to that? Oh, I didn't hold them accountable. Okay. Or they need a little bit of extra encouragement, or they need some advice, or maybe we need to make things easier for them. There's a million ways that I contribute to that situation. And I want to make sure that I'm taking responsibility for them so that, so that I'm not in victim mode, and also so that I can help my kids become capable and responsible young people. All right, next item on the list. Be okay with the idea that the world isn't fair, right? Like, instead of complaining about it, like, accept it. We all know it's true, right? We know that things are going to come and go. We know that people are going to die. We know that maybe hard times are going to come. There's going to be weather, there's going to be catastrophe, right? This is a given, right? I think a lot of times we try to protect our kids, and maybe your parents did this for you, and trying to make sure things are fair, right? But the truth is, the world is not fair. The world is not a fair place. And so let's stop pretending that it's supposed to be fair. It's not supposed to be fair. It's not supposed to be safe all the time. The world is not supposed to be a safe place. And when we can acknowledge that and accept that, now we can let go. We have freedom to say, yeah, gosh, that wasn't fair, but it's not supposed to be fair. That's not the way the world works. But again, now we're back into our own, owning our power. I can can decide how I want to respond to this, how I handle the situation. One thing you can do when things happen that you don't like, is you can say, what can I learn about from this situation? What good has come out of this? Have I witnessed other people, responding in love? Is this my opportunity to reach out to someone else in love or compassion or generosity, right? what what good can come out of this bad situation? How can I turn it around and use it, to serve me, to serve the world? This is incredibly powerful. The thing about things being fair, or let's say the thing is going the way we want them to go and never having any problems, living in that kind of a world, it doesn't require you to grow, right? It doesn't require anything of you. You can just stay the same, right? And as human beings, that's basically like, that's stagnation and that's boredom. And eventually, like, you'll just shrivel up and die. You need to be challenged. You need to grow as a person. That is where fulfillment comes from. That's where satisfaction comes from, right? We are fulfilled and satisfied when we learn and grow. And so that is the whole point there. We don't want things to be easy. We want to be better, right? I've heard this quote. It's like, don't wish things were easier. Wish you were stronger. Wish you were better. Because when we get better, when we get stronger, now we can handle the next thing that comes down the pike. And maybe we can teach others as well. So taking personal responsibility, which is really the opposite of being in victim mode, right? It will always, always serve you, right? It may be hard, it may be very challenging, but the results are so much more rewarding than the results that you get when you're stuck in victim mode. And I think you'll probably see, if you kind of weigh the two, which results would you rather have? Because either way, you're going to struggle, right? You can stay stuck in victim mode and you will struggle. Or you can choose growth mindset, you can choose personal responsibility, and you're going to struggle there too, right? There's struggle in either direction. It just depends on which direction you want to go. And both are available to you, and we would love to help you out with that. This is what our programs are all about. right? This is baked into all of our programs. But again, I wanted to take some time today to talk about victim mode because I know it's a real challenge for a lot of people, and I want to show you that there's another way to think about things. That is what I have for you this week, everyone. See you next week. That's all we have for you today. If you enjoyed this podcast, would you leave us a review? It would really help us get the word out. To start your decluttering journey, go to thedeclutteringclub.com. That is declutteringclub.com. We'll see you next time.